Hello and welcome back to Inside Great Minds. My name's Adam Outland, and if this is your first time joining Inside Great Minds, we focus on the decision-making principles that help successful people achieve their goals personally and professionally and deconstruct their process to do so. And in this upcoming episode, we have a really fantastic guest just in time for 4th of July week. That is Florent Groberg, or as he's known in the military as U.S. Army Captain Flo Groberg. Flo actually grew up near me and ended up going to college where we first met at University of Maryland. He was a Division I track athlete at University of Maryland, where he ran and was known for his between mile and 2 mile runs. Flo went on, as his name suggests, to become a captain in the Army. But beyond that, he actually made it through Ranger School to become an elite Ranger in the Army. Flo served in Afghanistan, and as one of the things you'll hear about him in his story is he became a Medal of Honor recipient from President Obama as a result of saving the lives of many individuals and team members in an event that took place in Afghanistan, and he'll share a little bit more color on that event. He's been on a Netflix special. He's been interviewed by Stephen Colbert and many others. Today, Flo is the Senior Director and Mission Lead of Azure for Microsoft. And prior to that, he was at Boeing as the Deputy Vice President and Business Director for Boeing Commercial Sales and Marketing. He's a motivational speaker. You're going to learn a tremendous amount about Flo, his decision-making that helped him be successful as a track athlete, be successful as an adopted child of his aunt, transitioning from France to the US, and obviously as a successful leader in the Army. There's so much to unpack. We barely get into everything we want to, and so I hope we'll get around to in the future. But I think you'll gain a lot from learning a little bit about my friend and the incredible U.S. Army Captain Florent Groberg in this episode of Inside Great Minds. Flo, you and I met all the way back at University of Maryland. I went to a field hockey game because I had the hots for this girl who's on the team. and you were sitting in the stands and just like cheering wildly at this field hockey match. It was like Duke versus Maryland. And so anyway, that was like my first encounter with Florent Groberg, and who I know is Flo. So I might have a hard time calling you Florent the whole time.
Flo, man.
Flo, awesome. And anyway, but you were a track athlete at Maryland back then, right?
Division I was. I remember that game. It was a night game. I remember that game because one, I think it was Duke, and well, we hate Duke at Maryland. Not that there's anything wrong with Duke. It's just all about sports. It probably stems from basketball. But yeah, I was watching my ex-girlfriend at the time, and so I went to more field hockey games than any other sport for for 3 years at Maryland. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, you learned a lot about field hockey.
I did.
A sport that down here in Texas not many people know about, but it's growing. It's growing.
Well, there's a reason why it's growing, because your wife is actually making that a reality.
Yeah, she's really done a great job building the club. But anyway, yeah, so we met then, and then like there were just these little moments where you were, and this is where you can help me fill in some color for our audience, but we go a little bit forward from that, and all of a sudden you graduated, and I feel like you were working in sales for a magazine or something. Like, help me remember what that first role was that you had, because I think it was at my mom's house just having a beer, and invited you over and a bunch of folks out of town. And you were telling me about this job, and that was like one of my other memories. Yeah, you were all jazzed about this.
Yeah, so really, when I graduated, I wanted to join the Army, and I couldn't join the Army right away because I had to renounce my French citizenship. So in the meantime, I had to find a couple of jobs, and one of them was I worked in sales, but for Fastenal. So I sold nuts and bolts for Fastenal. Yeah. But I had a side gig with a buddy of mine, and I joined a fraternity when I went to University of Wilmington in North Carolina for a semester. I joined Chi Phi fraternity. And my big brother, he was working for a magazine, Surfer magazine. And so here I was randomly doing side gigs with him, going to San Diego to conferences, helping him with his magazine and the host of his magazine, wearing Volcom hats and pants and shirts and pretending I was a surfer. I've never been on a surfboard in my whole life, living the dream of these folks. But it was an interesting time. Let's just say it didn't work out very well for any of us. But it was one of those where you get to learn a little bit about yourself, right? You put yourself in an uncomfortable position, really in the midst of the unknowns, but you're having fun with it because you're doing it with other people who are like-minded and committed to finding success. But as you go through that progression, you understand like, okay, that didn't work. Let's figure that one out. And so I took a couple of nuggets there from that experience at a really young age. You're talking about being 21. And I applied those right later on in life without realizing it, which is super interesting as you look back now.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were, kind of an entrepreneurial first endeavor, but we'll kind of probably go back and highlight some of those moments. And then, future fast forward, you actually make it into the military, but through the Army, right?
Yeah.
And so I know there was a whole story to unpack there because, like you said, you had to renounce French citizenship.
Yeah.
But what was tell us and remind me, like, because you had went through the Marine channel originally, right?
I was thinking about it. Yeah. And then you have to figure out like where you want to go. And so the Army was pretty simple. So they had this thing where if I wanted to go in as an officer, I had to renounce my French citizenship. So I didn't realize that for a while. So that really delayed all my paths in the military. And because of that, I had to, go through a whole process, go to the French embassy, do all the paperwork. And then I had to wait 18 months for the French government to actually renounce my French citizenship. So when I was in college, I had all these aspirations of joining, the Army, joining the Marines, maybe the Navy, whatever it was, but I didn't understand that process. And so when it came down to like paperwork and my ability to do so, I couldn't do it. And so I went through that process, eventually got my paperwork done. And then, you fast forward 2007, 2008, and here I am. Let's go do it, right? Now I have everything, all my ducks in a row. All my processes in place, and I know exactly what I need to do. And I went to a recruiter, MEPS in Maryland, and then next thing you know, I had a basic training date and officer candidate school date.
So I have not served in the military, but through conversations with folks who have, I feel like there is, call it good competition between the different branches. Positive competition. So how did you go the Army route? Like, you're saying Navy, Army, like, how did you land on that?
Well, it's like anything else, right? It's like almost like you're looking at a college application, and you have to pick, the things that really interest you. Realizing with the Navy and first of all, I never consider the Air Force, specifically because the mindset of the Air Force was always flying, and I don't want to fly. The Navy and it's and the Marines, it's kind of like, Marines are closer to the military, to the Army, right? Ground forces, but they're still on ships. And so the idea of the sea really wasn't my thing either. So it was kind of easy at the end to pick the Army. I wanted to go infantry. I wanted to go Rangers. That was in the Army. So it just made my decision pretty simple. And I made, that decision, went through the recruiters, and, they talked about what it would entail, timelines and things like that. And really, I just wanted to go to Afghanistan. I wanted to go fight. Afghanistan or Iraq, but I wanted to go fight. And so the Army was my route. Made a pretty quick decision once I got my paperwork and just went with it.
Yeah. How much did being a track athlete help you through the beginning period?
It was 100% game changing. I mean, I was the fastest guy there was no one near me when I was in basic training. I think I ran my first 2 mile, the first PT test, probably 10:05. I think the closest person was probably 11:30, 11:40. And so they thought I cheated. But it was funny because it was impossible to cheat because they give you a piece of paper with a number on it. You run a mile down a straight road, you give it to one of the instructors once you get there, and then you run back. So you can't cut corners, literally. So the first sergeant, remember, he asked me to stand aside and called me a liar and a cheater. And he's on the radio calling the other sergeant that's at the end of the mile, and he's asking, he's like, did you get a guy, in front of everyone, like that give you, what was his number? He's like, yeah, there was this dude that way in front of everybody else, and his number was whatever. And then he came back to me, he's like, why, how are you so fast? What are you taking? I told him, I'm not taking anything. I just trained for the last few years of my life, I ran track in college. But then they challenged me, and they said, you're a runner, but can you do push-ups and stuff? And I maxed my PT test. So absolutely, I was, it was sit-ups and push-ups were easy. So that gave me an advantage early on in my training, because they associated my ability to run that fast and be good at PT with the ability of being disciplined. And so with that, they considered me, in a leadership position early on in training. But it really helped me throughout my military career, because being able to run fast, that puts a sort of a target on you, but a good one at times.
Yeah. Did you what did you run in college? Actually, I don't even know if I know this.
I ran anything but a mile up to the 10,000 meters. I really thought of myself as a miler. I had a coach that thought of me as a 10,000 meter runner, which was not realistic. But if you had to settle, I was a really good 2-miler.
A good tour.
Yeah.
So that's almost bridging. I mean, that's distance, right? I mean, we're not talking about sprints. We're talking about endurance at 2 miles, right?
Yeah, correct. Definitely not sprints. But I was, I dabble in the 800, and I always wanted to run a 400. They didn't want me to run the 400. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah. But that endurance, that what it takes to do 2 miles is a really good, probably even more at life applicable, I feel like, to like everyday endurance requirements that you get from running distance.
Yeah, I think that 2 mile was just a really good, race for me, because it was long enough that you could think a lot during that race, but it was short enough that you could use tactics and really have an impact early on. So like what you did in that first lap really would impact the 8th lap, right? Versus a 10K is 25 laps, where you're just running, right, for the first couple miles, first 8 laps, and the race hasn't even started. So that was, there's some differences in there. I like the 2 mile because it really, I could use my speed in it. I use my strength in it. I like the mile just because it's just fun. It's just fast. It's all guts to me. And it's the race, right? Everyone knows the mile race, right? You have the 400 and you have the mile, right? It's just two of those big races that when the Olympics come around, that's what you're watching.
Yeah.
It's 100 too. Yeah.
And so like you had this training at Maryland, as a Division I athlete. You go, it sounds like just crush it, at the Army. I mean, that's what it sounds like. I mean, were there any points where you're like, nah, this isn't for me, or where you wanted to quit when you were joining the Army?
Not joining the Army. That was easy. Actually, I was probably the annoying guy. I was the annoying guy at basic training, because every morning I woke up 0400, fired up, right? Fired up for the day, because every single day was a day closer for me earning the right to call myself a soldier. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go fight. I wanted to be part of that team. And so, 9 weeks of training, and I couldn't wait for the 9 weeks to be done, but I had to earn it. The only time that I thought anything about quitting was in Ranger School. And so that's later on. That's one of the toughest military, schools you can go through. And that was just, I went through some really difficult times emotionally and physically during the second phase of Ranger School. And what I needed was a little bit of guidance, and and a little bit of support. That's what I got from one of my teammates, Gallardo. But that was the only time I thought, like, man, maybe this isn't for me. I can't handle this. But it was just me being weak emotionally. And that was solved rather quickly. I think that changed in about 24, 36 hours.
Yeah. So talk to me about the Rangers. So in the world of the Army, the Rangers are their elite force. And for the layman civilian that doesn't understand and all the details of the different branches of military and the elite units, and you're probably gonna just shoot me on the Zoom for even like trying to make this comparison, but the Marines have the Navy SEALs, right?
The Navy does. No,
sorry. Yeah. That's right. Marines. So the Navy has the Navy SEAls. Who do the Marines have then?
MARSOC.
MARSOC. Okay.
Yeah.
And the Army has Green Rangers, right? And then also
Special Forces.
Okay. And Green Beret, is that?
Yeah, that's the Green Beret, Special Forces. And then they have the elite of the elite, which is Delta.
Delta. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Right.
So they all play different roles, right? And
Yeah.
and the Rangers go in and they raid. That's what they do, right? They're not into, so Special Forces, they're in to be just to go into a country, indigenous population, recruit individuals, and train them to overthrow their own government, right? That's what they do. So they're behind enemy lines, just a couple of them, a team of X amount, and they're training populations to overthrow a government. Rangers are there to raid. They come in with a full assault element. They go on a target, raid that target, and then get off the objective. Delta and SEAL Team 6, you probably have seen movies about these guys. They're like the cream of the crop, the best of the best. And they have very sensitive, specialized missions that they go accomplish around the world at a moment's notice. MARSOC is more of another special forces type of organization, out of the Marines. Some of the best snipers you'll ever find are with MARSOC. So and then you got the JTACs and the CATPs and TACPs, sorry, with the Air Force, right? Some of the best as well there too. So every branch has specialized unit, but in the end, there's two
right.
just two that stand out, and that's Delta and that's SEAL Team 6.
Got it. Okay. So with something like the Ranger, what do they call it? Ranger school. Like, what do you have to
Ranger
get?
School.
Ranger school. Yeah. How many people start and how many people actually make it through? Like, what are the numbers?
Oh boy, I think we had 331 that started in my class, and 69 of us graduated.
How many? 60?
69.
69. Wow. Yeah. So it truly is. It's like not everybody gets selected by any means, right? Because that's a very, very small percentage of the Army.
But you have to make it in. So
right.
You have to take a test, PT test, and meet the requirements to get invited to the school.
Got it.
So you have, X amount of people that want to go there. Majority don't. They don't get selected, don't get a course date. Then you get there, and then you go through the initial physical phase for about a week. And then you go through 3 different phases. Darby, that's in Georgia. It's in Fort Benning, Georgia. And then you have Dahlonega, that's somewhere in Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. And then we go down and that's the mountain phase. So it's a lot of climbing up mountains and up and down. And then you have the Florida phase, which is, the swamp phase. That's the 3rd phase. Then you graduate.
Wow.
So believe it or not, the first week takes out a lot of people because they just run you down for the first 4 or 5 days. You have your PT test, you have all your physical, your obstacle course, and they put you on, back to back to back. Then you have your 12-mile ruck march. Then you have all these assessments, and it just never stops. You're barely sleeping. So it's a shock to the system, and you got to meet the standards. And if you don't meet the standards, you get cut. And then there's no, it's over. And then you go through your phases, and these phases are patrols, where you get a moment of instruction from the instructors. And then it's all about planning and executing, right? So every mission is broken down into 2 sections, which is one is a planning phase where you do an operations order and you plan, enemy, friendly routes and all that stuff, right? The way you're going to do the mission, then you brief it so that everyone's tracking what you're supposed to do, right? And then you go execute it in the field. And you're graded on every aspect of it, right? And so you have leadership positions. Everyone rotates through these leadership positions, and you're supposed to do your job. But then you got to do this while you're starving, you're exhausted, unrealistic expectations a lot of times within these missions, right? And then the instructors at times when everything's going too well, they will throw some, random obstacles in front of you just to see how you react. And the whole point is they want to frustrate the heck out of you to see what kind of decision you're going to make. But really, in essence, is what kind of leader are you, and what kind of follower are you, and who are you going to be when all odds are stacked up against you. So you really learn a lot about yourself in that school. I believe it's the best leadership school in the military.
That's amazing. I remember reading the book Grit, and it was a while ago, but I think the book had, they were doing some testing, psychological testing at West Point to figure out what's the grit factor that actually causes people to make it through those moments and be top of their class, or to kind of have those breakthrough, where they don't hit a wall and then back down, but actually break through it. And they were trying to do predictives in that book to figure out, could they guess which ones were going to break and which ones weren't, right? With you, what do you think it was that helped you push through that insane first period of Ranger School? Like you said, you hit some major walls, right? Like most people do.
Yeah, my walls were, so the physical piece was easier for me because I there's one thing that I came in as I was physically ready. Like
Right.
I was, there's no doubt, I was in top shape, right? I was running really well. I was stronger than I've ever been, and stronger than I've ever been even in college. And so I was mentally focused and ready on the physical part. Um, and I thought that my weakness would be some of the maneuvers in the field, because I was just still a young officer and I'd just gone through training. I'd never really done it outside of training. So I figured, here I am, I'm coming in with folks from all around the Army, some with a lot of combat experience already. And so I figured like I'll have a steep learning curve at certain points. Kind of find out, to me, the hardest part was the physical piece, carrying that ruck, and that was 100 pounds at times up and down mountains and not sleeping, really took a toll on me. It wasn't, I don't know if you can really prepare yourself for it, right? To an extent. And so I went through this period of time where I'll never forget it. It was in mountain phase, and it just freaking downpoured on us. And we're going up this mountain and we're all slipping down, and it's just frustrating, right? You're going back and and they're yelling at you, and you're trying to make it up this mountain and you're full of mud and you haven't showered in X amount of days. You're barely eating, you don't sleep. It just sucks. And I remember just thinking, like, getting really frustrated and thinking, this is not for me. I don't think I can make it through. I'm like, this is just like day, let's say 20, right? And I got like another 40 plus days of this stuff that I got to go through. And I just figured, I started becoming weak. And it kind of reminded me to an extent of, after, not in that moment, right, of a race. When you go through, you're running, let's say 2 miles, and you get through, out of 5 laps, and you've gone so fast in your first 4 laps, and you know that you're in your 5th lap, and after this one, you have 3 more. So all you're thinking about is like, man, I have to keep going for 3 more, and your brain starts playing tricks on you. I don't think you can do it. Do you think you can do it? That's going to be really painful. This is going to be really, 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 really hard. And then in a race, what you do is you take that and you push a little bit harder, right? And that's the whole point, right? You just, because your body is capable of doing it. It's all mental games. And so the way you defeat the mental games is you defeat your own, demons, internal demons, and you tell them, no, I'm good to go. And you just kind of block them out and you drive on and you pick up the pace a little bit, and then you get your second win. It's fascinating how that works, right? These guys are, these athletes, unbelievable. So I kind of, in this case, that's what I needed, but I just didn't know how to get there. And I got there because of a teammate named Gallardo, who had been multiple deployments, awesome guy, and incredibly well regarded when we were in the school up there. And he just kind of, he saw me struggling a little bit, and he came to me and he said, listen, man, if you're thinking about quitting, I'm thinking about quitting too, but let's do it tomorrow morning. And so at that point I was like, wow, okay, Gallardo's thinking that way. So I was thinking, like, I'm not the only one thinking that way. So even this guy, who's like a legend, for what he's done in Afghanistan, he's thinking that way. So I was like, okay. I was like, sounds good. So now I had a target, right? So no, I'm no longer thinking about the immediate like moment in front of me. I hate my life.
Quitting right now. It's
now
like,
I'm like, okay, well, I can relate to someone else who I know has gone through, hell. I was like, he's going through hell. He went through hell and he's struggling right now. Okay, so I'm not this crazy person. Second, I got a target. I'm just going to make it to that point, and then we'll figure out. So when we got to that point, we woke up in the morning. He came up to me. He's ready to quit. I said, no. He's like, okay, cool. Let's have that conversation again tomorrow. So now we had another target. So fascinating when you break down the long piece into like stages, and then you just kind of focus on like target to target to target. And then that got me through my really rough spot. So I went piece by piece, and eventually you stack them up, and you're out of this rough spot, and then it's
Yeah.
like sunny,
And you
and
made it.
yeah, and you made it. And so that's what I had to go through. It
So
was,
it's like what's going through your head is you're like, okay, I know I can quit tomorrow morning. I can't quit right now, but tomorrow morning I can quit. So I just need
right.
to get to tomorrow morning. So it was like, instead of like, oh shit, I got to make it through 10 more days of this brutal. It's just like, nope, just through this afternoon and evening, and then I can quit. I mean, it was
Yeah.
that kind of, that's amazing. It's like procrastinating on something, like a good form of procrastination. Like, I'm just going to wait one day
Yeah,
to
I'm gonna
quit.
do it one more day, and then then it's whatever. I'm out tomorrow, and then you
That's
get there,
brilliant.
you're like, I can probably do one more day. Okay, one more day, and after I think it was after the third day, it was like, what am I thinking? Like, I got this. Really, I'll never forget. The sun came out, and it was like a nice day. It stopped raining, and you start feeling sorry for yourself, and you're like, no, I don't feel sorry for myself anymore. Like, I got this. But it was really, the concept here is, it's all mental, right? My body could absolutely handle it, no issues. I've never put that type of stress in my body, so I was learning. But in the end, it was just seeing that someone else that I could relate to, that I looked up to, and I could relate to, was going through the same thing. It wasn't just me. It really gave me a whole sense of purpose and confidence that I didn't have, when I started that second phase at Ranger School.
Hmm. Man, that's so cool. That's a great story. How often have you? So I feel like for sure you are using the tactical knowledge and obviously the endurance you developed through all this in the field. I mean, just fast forward to when you're deployed. I mean, can you think of a time where you actually used that resource where um, it got super tough and you remembered that mental exercise that you used to get yourself through Ranger School when it was really tough? Do you feel like you had moments where you applied that in the field?
Well, you transition it, and to an extent. So I never had that physical moment where
Yeah.
I wanted to like quit in combat. Right? You're at that point, man. You're tip top shape, and you're ready to roll. And by the way, you train harder in reality. Right? Nothing in combat was as hard as Ranger School. Right? It
Wow.
almost makes it
Yeah.
unrealistically hard in Ranger School versus combat. But what you do is you transition that into other pieces. So you take the lessons learned, right? So what's the lesson learned? What's the lesson learned from the Lanaga, Georgia mountain phase? I wanted to quit, but the reason I didn't quit is because I listened to a teammate, right? It wasn't about me. And that's what the military is about. It's never about you. It's about the team. It's about the people around you. And so I've been in positions in combat during my deployment where I doubted myself, right?
Mhm.
Doubted. So same thing, right? Just a little bit different context. Doubted myself. And so I went back to my lessons learned, which is, okay, you're in this moment where you need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of support, or a little bit of a confidence boost. You have a team of subject matter experts within your organizations who have been training and been deploying and things like that. Utilize those resources to make sure that you're doing it right. And those were my teammates, the people that work for me. One of them was my Sergeant Staley, my platoon sergeant, my number two in charge. He had multiple tours, Iraq and Afghanistan, hell of a lot more experience than me. So why would I go into this whole planning phase or even a combat situation where I was unsure and do it all by myself and put other people's lives at risk when I had another individual that was my teammate that I was dependent and I relied on, who could help me? And so the key word in all this is vulnerability. The idea of being vulnerable. That to me is the one of the best traits of a real leader. When a real leader doesn't know, he or she is not afraid to ask for support or guidance or mentorship, even if it's for subordinates, or peers. And so I did that very effectively in my first tour, where I talked to Staley, and the first time I introduced myself, I told him that I would take my pride, my rank, and my ego and put them to the side. But instead, I needed him to mentor and guide me and teach me how to be the most effective leader while allowing me to still be the leader. And I think that was a little confusing for him. Like, it was a little confusing for me too, because didn't have a playbook on how that was going to develop. But
Sure.
the idea was I would want to pick his brain and listen to him, and ask for his opinion and make sure that everything that I planned had his touch on it because we're a team. And that I wasn't afraid to give him that responsibility and then that power. Because to me,
Yeah.
the thing that mattered was my team
You
and the mission.
know, it sounds so similar. I was listening to NPR, Guy Raz's Wisdom from the Top, and he just recently interviewed General Petraeus. And I don't know if you heard that interview, but and actually my timelines might be a little warped here. Did you serve under him or was he after you?
Patrice was there when I was there. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
First tour. Yeah.
So yeah, because he was okay. And in that interview, one of the things Guy asked Petraeus was, about his leadership style. And he said, and they pointed out that sometimes in chain of command, it can be really easy to ignore, or not ignore, but create a dynamic where people don't tell you the crap that's really going on, right? Because they're, they don't want to bring that to you. They don't want to tell you you're wrong. That's just not really, smiled on, right? Going up the chain of command. But he said he did everything he could to create a kind of dynamic with his people where they had that openness communication. He gave everybody's email and he just said, invited them to, because if you don't know what's actually going on in the field, if you choose to look through rose-tinted glasses, you miss a lot, right? And I almost hear that in what your story was explaining, which is this curiosity to know not just what your people are thinking, but to create the space where they can be open and honest with you, right?
Yeah, and that's so I believe in the concept of trust and confidence, and that's the way I lead, right? Trust and confidence. Trust that you're going to do the right thing when no one's watching, right? Have the confidence in when you're struggling, you're going to reach out for support. And I also believe in being authentic, and so that's probably one of the most important leadership characteristics that I bring to the table that I really don't see a lot or often, which is I'm going to tell you the way it is, and I'm going to tell you who I am, and I'm going to be vulnerable at times, but you know exactly what you get out of me. And so my teams tend to trust me a little bit sooner than they would trust other potential leaders because they know that I'm just going to bring me to the table. I'm not going to fake it. At times I'm not going to be as polished as other leaders. And that's okay, right? Because I'm me, and I'm going to give you everything out of me to you to allow you to find success, right? Or win or be the best teammate. But it's sometimes I'm not going to be able to have that answer, and that's okay because I will tell you that too. Or I'm not going to sugarcoat things around. I'm not going to maybe give you the 100% exact reality on the ground, but I'm going to tell you that things are not looking good. And I do that up and down the chain to my bosses, my bosses, and to my team as well. I know how to shield better for my team, but everything that I do, no matter what, and this is one thing I learned in the military, is when you find a problem, come up with a solution. And if you don't have a solution, tell them that you're looking for a solution. Don't just show up and talk about the problem and complain. I hate that. These people that do that to on my team don't find success on my team, because at that point I can't depend on you, right? Because I just know that all you're going to do is complain, but you're not actively looking for a way to solve that obstacle, right? And that's like, and then you're asking me to come jump in and start to micromanage and try to figure things out. No, like we all play a part on the team. We're all a piece of the puzzle. If one piece is weak, we got to figure out how to support it, right? But if one piece just doesn't want to play the game, then at that point you got to replace that piece. And it's business, just so it wasn't military, just like it's in corporate America for me right now, and that's the reality of it.
Yeah, love that. Well, that was going to label that that's a true business operations application to that principle too. One of the things that in our consulting firm that we teach managers that relates to exactly what you said is a lot of managers say why to their people. They'll say, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you show up on time? And that inadvertently coaches people to then come to you with an excuse because you're asking them why, like you really want to know, but you don't want to know the excuse, but we keep asking them that, right? So we always say replace why questions with how questions instead when you're asking people, so that you don't train your people to inadvertently give excuses. I love it. I think that's such a always be solutions oriented. And then what can we do as leaders to help our people do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that to me is a key to success, because in the end, you're gonna have to figure you're gonna have to figure it out. And how often have you been in groups where people just sit around the table and it's just quiet, and people don't want to give you that how because they don't feel empowered. That's the other piece, right? Or they don't want to sound stupid, or because that ecosystem as a team is not built around trust and confidence. It's built around almost being, and this is going to be probably not popular, but like, it's like almost like you work for dictators. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Andreas talked about it. He had folks who didn't want to give him the reality on the ground because they were afraid to give him bad news. That's because more than likely they work for someone that destroy them when you brought in bad news. I want bad news because that's what's happening. I just don't want bad news without a solution. Like, come in and give me like a way of thinking, like, okay, so you've seen this develop and here's the situation. It's not good. What have you done, or what are you thinking of doing to to find a solution, right? And get me started in my thinking process, at least for me.
Yeah.
It might not be the right, solution, but at least
it's something,
right?
It's something,
right?
Yeah.
Because that, what's the best part about it? At least you can eliminate the bad potential solutions, right? So you're giving me options, and then we can bring the rest of the team together and figure it out if we need to. But too often people are just scared to bring it up because they don't believe that is the leadership's going to be receptive, and then that's a big problem, because then that problem grows and grows and grows.
Yeah. All the stuff we're talking about, I feel like is many of the things that we're talking about relate to communication skills, right? Like your ability to communicate. And, actually, I had a request from a guy who's ex-military and defense contractor now to ask you a question. And he said, ask Phil about the ability to build relationships with your interpreters in the field and the people that are actually native to the country. And I remember when the Taliban came back in recently, you were a real big advocate for trying to pull a lot of those relationships that you developed out of the country before it was too late. How did communication skills and working with folks in the country, I mean, talk to me about that. How did that influence things and just the strategy? And I just want to hear your take.
Well, first of all, we got 3 of them out, and that was huge. One of them is here in Fort Worth, and that was Reggie. And so very, very happy that we got him out. That was a difficult situation, but it's like anything in life. That communication piece can be difficult at times, because obviously that's not their native language, and they learned it in Afghanistan, and so there's going to be some barriers. But it's about patience. It's about simplifying things, which is something I'm huge on. Simplifying the message and being able to put together a comprehensive, to an extent, right, thought in your head, simplifying it in a very few words so you can pass it on to your translator, who can then pass it on to the local Afghan villager or policeman or military, so that you can have a successful communication channel there. But it's about patience. Sometimes about repeating yourself. And I know, I know a couple of my peers would get really frustrated because they're on the go, right? You're always in a stressful situation. Like, just tell them exactly what I just told you, right?
Yeah.
And so what I would always repeat myself with my translators, be like, you got this, Shams, you got this, Mohammed, you got this, Reggie. Yeah, I got this. I got this, Steve. What a guy named Steve. We called him Steve. And but you have to have trust in them, because you really don't know if they're actually saying what you're saying. And so I kept my messaging very simple, because I knew if I kept it simple, that there was probably more of an 80 to 90% chance that my message was being passed to that subject, and that subject would actually understand what I was talking about and then reply back. The biggest mistakes I've seen is officers, and I had a boss that would do this, would just talk like we are right now and be like, okay, well, tell him that I want no one walking the streets of the village after 11 p.m. at night because the Taliban's over there and they're watching, and we can't tell the difference between you and the Taliban. So you know, and then you have his translator like, okay, 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 and then he turns around, and it says like 3 lines. And you're like, did he just tell him exactly what I said? And so I don't know, right? I'm hoping at that point, and there's a lot of miscommunication a lot of times.
Yeah.
So the way I did it is I built this relationship with my translators, and I kept it really simple. And I would just say a couple lines, be like, okay, Reggie, tell him that I'm very happy to be here today. And he'll be like, oh, I'll be happy. Ask him if there are any bad people, who he considers bad people that come into the village. Okay, no, all right, okay. Ask him, he would tell me, you know, the bad people come. And I just do this, and it just takes a lot longer at times, but I just kept it very simple. And so I had my objective, and my objective was to build rapport with that villager, and then get him to trust me or see me as a good guy, right? So that he doesn't shoot me, or he doesn't tell the bad guys to shoot me as soon as I walk out of the village. And I would do that. And so that was really that I couldn't do it without my translator. And so I built that really close relationship with them. And I made them, lastly, I made them feel like they're a part of our team. So they were part of my team. They were a part of my platoon. So they were just as important as any of my guys at that moment, every time they step outside the wire with us. And they felt that. And I think that brought us a lot of success.
Yeah. And obviously, as we've seen, those guys took on a lot of risk doing that as well. Right. Which is, something to acknowledge for us and trying to get them back. I love that. Man, just rewind way back into the beginning stages. You said French citizenship. You know, Flo, as a kid, like what was your upbringing that with French citizenship and the US, like your mom, dad, who's the French citizen, and did you grow up over there? Just give us a little color to the early life of Flo.
Yeah, so I grew up in Paris, and for the first 11 years of my life. I'm adopted on both sides. So my aunt adopted me from her sister, and she became my mom when I was born. And then I never met my biological father, so I don't know anything about him. So the first 3 years it was my mom and I for 3 years, and then she met Larry, who became my stepfather later on. He was working business side from Chicago, but he was all around the world, and so he spent a lot of time in Paris, and they just hit it off. And for the next 8 years they dated, and then one day he asked us when I was 11 if we were interested in moving to the States, and we made that leap, right? So I didn't speak English when I came to the States in 1994, so that was really a change in lifestyle. Challenged me a little bit, but I really loved the US, and everything was just different, right? Bigger, and things I'd seen on TV growing up, that was reality. Now, example was big yellow buses for school. Wouldn't have those when I went in the city. And so the idea of like seeing, big yellow buses and getting on one of them was really like super exciting to me, where like other kids around me probably didn't, care, or that was just the way of life. To me, I was like, wow, this is reality. But came here and, just immersed myself in sports, learned the language, and really fell in love with this country. So felt lucky, right, that I had this opportunity to be here, and blessed, because it could have been very different for me growing up without a dad, and in a situation where I could have been an orphan, right? So I feel blessed that my aunt mom adopted me. She married Larry. He brought me in, gave me his name, opened up all these opportunities for me to be successful here in the US. So a little background there.
Yeah, Larry is such an important person in your life, obviously. And I remember you talking to him to me about him. Gosh, even when we were back in college before you officially joined. Was he an inspiration to do the military, or was that just something in your own heart that you wanted to do?
So the military was more, he served himself. I think almost every male that I'm close to in my family has served. But my uncle on my mom's side is Algerian. And he fought in the late 1980s, early 1990s, a terrorist organization called the GIA that came in, predecessor of Al Qaeda. And they came into Algeria, westernized North African country, Muslim country, where women, they wore mini skirts. If you wanted to drink, you go drink. If you want to go to the club, you go to the club. Right? That was just the way of the world over there for them. And so obviously these fanatics did not like that, and so they wanted to bring Sharia law, and so this created a civil war. And my uncle went and fought against these people. And at the age of 22, he was shot, beheaded, and dismembered and put in a box during a ceasefire, Ramadan. And so that changed my life, because you had one of my favorite people in the world that was the sweetest person I've ever met, and that was taken away in such brutal way. And so that gave me sort of a taste early on in my life of the evil that was in this world. And then you fast forward a few years later, the same type of individuals, right after I've been naturalized 7 months prior as a U.S. citizen, attack, our country, and 9/11, obviously. And so that really cemented my path towards the military. I knew at that point that no matter what, I'd go and fight, because I wanted to eradicate that type of evil from the world.
Yeah. And I think your background of living in another country, coming to the States, having these people that are influences in your life that on the other, this side of the equation too, where your uncle was literally subject to that. There's so many people in our country that can look at a military conflict and make it very, very black and white, right? But then you get boots on the ground, and it's actually a lot of shades of gray, right? I mean, there's still the enemy, but I feel like you meet the populace, and where some of us over there go, oh yeah, those are bad people, right? Or that's a bad religion. And then you actually get over there, and it's quite different than that. Do you feel like that maybe your childhood and experiencing different cultures helped equip you for the ability to relate to that more complex boots on the ground situation?
Yeah, I think I had a cultural advantage. In that 11 years, I also lived for a year in Spain. I never really bring it up because I was so young, but I still remember it. Right, I was between the age of 5 and 6. Yes. So, you move in country to country, growing up with Muslim in your family, and then Lutheran in your family, right? Just a Democratic mother, like as Republican as it possibly get, father. You're shaped to be able to really assimilate, but also understand and listen more effectively. And so that I took those life experiences unknowingly into Afghanistan, and I was better equipped to associate, relate, communicate with the local populace and some of our partners there. Also, I looked at them as human beings. Believe it or not, that's a big thing. I knew that if we were going to be successful, I needed to, understand what they were going through and their point of view. And so, even though my number one priority was my men and accomplishing the mission, I knew that we're more than likely going to accomplish the mission if we're better supported by the local populace and our partner Afghan National Army or Afghan National Police there. And to do so, you had to build relationships with them. You had to show that they could trust you. You had to show that you cared about them. And so I did that. I'm pretty sure some of my peers didn't really care about that. And look, some had success, some didn't. But that was just the way I operated. And so it was, and at times it was interesting to hear their stories. And you found some fascinating things. Some of these people, man, they've been in the mountains forever. Like one of them asked me if World War II was over. It's kind of weird. Yeah.
Is it over?
Yeah.
Wow.
I saw the Russians not too long ago. Now you're here. Is World War II still happening? I was like, oh.
Wow. You share this quality that I feel like you get when you move around a little bit when you're younger, right? That I had to, where I grew up in Germany, came to the States, went to a school in DC, then went to like a backcountry school in Western North Carolina, where you have to assimilate, you have to develop people skills. It's like necessary. You have to learn how to be funny, right? And make people laugh. You got to learn these skills to almost like survive as a kid. And I don't want to put that on you. I don't know if that was, your experience as a young person, but I do know that when I met you at college, you had like some of the best people skills I'd ever seen. I mean, you were like, you could make someone laugh and you could work a room of people, and then I went to your wedding and nothing really changed. I mean, you still had all those abilities and maybe some more.
I think, yeah, what is that called? Like, you want to be the life of the party, right? That's what I used to get sometimes. And I was actually, you're absolutely right. It's a coping mechanism to fit in. It's almost like, that's why when I went and worked for the government, to be a spy, it was probably the easiest thing for me to do, because what's the characteristics of a good spy, right? The ability to relate.
Yeah.
Right. The ability to infiltrate and relate, so that no matter who is in a room, they can connect with you. And so when you don't speak a language and you're, in a foreign country, especially young, like that's like when my middle school years, these were the tough ones, because people will crush you, make fun of you, and do whatever. But you have to have the ability to figure out ways for you to infiltrate almost. And by doing that, you look around and then you associate, and then you start understanding, okay, they like this, they like that, they like this, they like that. I like this, but not really that. But how do I bring myself in there and into the mix of conversation? So you almost have a moldable type of personality that allows you to be, sort of welcomed. And luckily, I'm not an introvert, right? Because that would have been a lot harder as a kid specifically. And so I've never been afraid to put myself out there. Right? I've never been afraid of rejection. I'm curious. So, and then I like to challenge myself and put me in positions where I don't know how I'm going to react, just to see how I'm going to react. And that that built my personality over the years, but also know when to turn the switch and be very serious. And I think that really worked out very well. That worked out very well for me in the military. But yeah, in college, I mean, we were a little nuts at times. And that's a fact. But I think all those experiences really did help me. And when I public speak now, I don't think I'm the best public speaker out there, but I get some pretty good reviews, because people feel like when they walk out of there, they feel like I can relate to that guy. Like he's authentic. Man, that story, I feel like I was there. And that's because, that's just the way I talk and who I've been all my life. And this, as knowing me since I was 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. So I don't know. It's interesting. That's why I can relate to. There are leaders that I can relate to. I want to listen to them, and because I feel like, man, I can be. I wonder if I could ever be in their shoes. Wait, I could be in their shoes, or I feel like I was right there, and that's interesting to me.
Just a little bit of change here, but there are a lot of folks, and I know this is part of what you really support and help with now, that that finish their time in military service and then struggle to assimilate back home, or they finish their time in service and they come back home, but maybe the memories they always relive are the military ones. They don't necessarily have another next step. It's kind of like a friend of mine where they compared it to the guy in high school that was like the champion football player. Yeah. And those are the memories. And they're still back in their high school town drinking beer, talking about that one memory, right? It's obviously to say a life-changing experience is an understatement. But you went through something really tough specifically. So you actually won the Medal of Honor because you took action in a situation. And as a result of that action, you lost the muscle in one of your legs, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And so talk to me. Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I received the Medal of Honor in 2015, President Obama, for actions that happened on August 8, 2012 in Eastern Afghanistan with a suicide bomber. We were able to identify him, and I rushed him, hit him, grabbed him, threw him, and he detonated, killed 4 of my brothers: Commander Sergeant Griffin, Major Gray, Major Kennedy, and Reg Abdel Fattah. So you talk about the worst day of my life. That was the worst day of my life. And, I wear the bracelet here as a reminder every day that every breath that I can take is because of the people who sacrifice so much for us. And so that's something I will never take for granted. But for me, I lost 50% of my calf muscle, my left calf, and definitely my left ear. As a runner, that sucks. Being able to no longer be able to run distance. I have a Ideo brace, which is really uncomfortable, what I use to go run and do some sprints at times. But I've been trying to figure out a way for me to run without that. I can only run very short distances, like 30-second sprints, things like that. But reality on the ground is I'm blessed. I'm blessed that I'm still here. And so as you think about your friend and that example that you use about the high school, player and, football star who goes to the local bar and all I can remember is that one touchdown he threw, 30 years ago. It's the inability to appreciate the stages in your life. And I've become very good at that. It's not easy. It's like really hard. But reality is that, I appreciate my time in high school. I learned a lot. It propelled me to my time in college. And guess what? I had an awesome time in college, loved college, but I appreciate that time. But that's over. Same with the military. When I had to transition, that was really difficult because it wasn't my choice. And I love what I was doing in the military. But the way I looked at it is, this country gave me the honor and responsibility to wear its uniform and lead men and women in combat in some of the most austere type of environments in the world. And I did that for 7.5 years and I loved it. And I should be appreciative of that moment instead of feeling sorry for myself that I can't do it anymore. At least I did it. So I take the lessons learned from that experience and then I challenged myself to go find the next stage in my life to be successful. Then I went into the case officer route and I was taken away when I received the medal. And so I was appreciative that I even had this couple of years of just like experiencing what that world's like and, learning, go through a lot of training and learn a lot about myself. And then I took those lessons and I applied it to corporate America. And then I went to Boeing and I got to be the chief of staff of the CEO of Boeing commercial airplanes. So during the MAX crisis, right? It was the hardest time of my professional life, honestly, without a doubt, working 7 days a week, going through some really emotional and stressful moments because of, what the company is going through and the people were receiving. But it gave me almost a PhD in disaster recovery and incident management. And so I appreciate that. Now I'm at Microsoft and I take all those lessons, each of these stages, and I look back and I've said, I'm ready. I moved on from there, but I learned and now I apply it to my life today. In essence, there's always a new challenge. There's zero chance that there's no new challenge. It's about, are you willing to close that chapter and open up the next one? And too many people are scared to do that. I enjoy it. I really do. Because I'm always, I'm the guy that just always wants that, being in that type of hostile environment with bullets raining above my head and having that pressure to go do.
Well, you don't need me to say this, but I'm sure we probably have another 7 or 8 chapters of flow to witness in the future. And I'm really excited to see what all those chapters have, because the last ones have been really amazing to watch from the sidelines. So thanks for making time for this interview, Flo. They probably need to do a part 2 at some point, because there's a lot of amazing events that have occurred in your life and a lot to unpack in terms of lessons. So thanks for being willing to share some of those with all of us.
Nah, thanks. And by the way, you're probably one of the most successful people I've ever met. I still remember what you did with the company back in college, which I thought was crazy, traveling the country and doing house to house, and then the development that of your teams and what you've done in a consulting firm. So there's no doubt that whatever you're doing, you and the team are doing, and the way you're impacting these businesses is going to be for the best, man. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for working the schedule. I know I'm very difficult to work a schedule around, traveling too much, but I really appreciate the opportunity to join you on your podcast today.
Yeah, thanks, Flo. Appreciate it.